Mark Reed-Edwards, Chief Marketing Officer at HFS. Welcome to this HFS videocast of a discussion between Saurabh Gupta, HFS President of Research and Advisory Services, along with Oscar Elizondo, Vice President, Global Enterprise Services at CEMEX, and Khalid Siddiqui, Partner, Global Offering Leader at IBM. Oscar Elizondo is an executive with more than 20 years of professional experience. He's held a variety of roles and positions and has developed a thorough understanding of the underlying principles, processes, strategies, and value generation potential of shared services, IT, business processes, and outsourcing agreements. Khalid Siddiqui is an executive leader experienced in building strong teams and delivering operational excellence and innovations in order to cash solutions. He has 20 plus years of multifunctional expertise, including operations, transitions, project management, and transformation and consulting. Heading up our discussion, Saurabh Gupta is a recognized thought leader and passionate problem solver in the global services industry, with nearly 2 decades of experience across enterprise, provider, advisory, and analyst roles. He brings a uniquely realistic and wide-ranging perspective to our industry's challenges and opportunities. So let me hand it over to Saurabh right now to get things underway. Saurabh.
Thanks, Mark, and welcome, Khalid and Oscar. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Saurabh.
We've been the last decade or so, we've been obsessed with digital transformation. And if you look at digital transformation, the narrative has been very technology centric. And we here at HFS believe in this concept of the one office, which looks at technology as an important enabler. But we do believe that, for real transformation, you need to look at competencies across the board. You need to look at holistically across people, process, technology, data, and then very importantly, culture and change. And a lot of our readers, viewers, and clients ask us, give us some examples of this one office. And we found a really good example of CEMEX, who's been on this transformation journey, which is one office in action. So I'm really glad to have Oscar and Oscar's partner in IBM, Khalid, to help us understand this journey a little better. So Oscar and Khalid, why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction of what this partnership is all about between CEMEX and IBM, and maybe Oscar, you can kick us off.
Sure, absolutely, Saurabh. Thank you very much for the introduction, and nice to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. So, what we believe at CEMEX is very aligned to what you describe as one office. We see a triangle based in people, process, and technology, and change cannot happen unless you touch the 3 of them, and you touch one, and certainly you will need to touch the other 2. Change management is definitely a key enabler in here. So in terms of transformation, let me just put some perspective into it. For the last 20 years, CEMEX has been deeply transforming itself on and on and on and on. We started by setting up and implementing a single management platform across all the operations. And that was in the early 2000s. We covered the whole world, all of our operations, and that set the basis for future transformation. It just made it simpler. And on top of that, there was a very strong governance model for it. So over the last decade, as you just mentioned, digital has changed our lives tremendously. And just as we were on our own personal lives, trying to see how we can get the most out of it, as a company, we were trying to understand how technologies were evolving to find which of them were mature at a certain point in time to be really applicable. So based on that, we were following and making very strong efforts in digital. And today we have a digital strategy that we are following up across the company. And that has three basic pillars. One of its pillars is our CEMEX Go digital platform. That is a platform that our customers use to transact with us. And that was a huge enabler for us during the pandemic. We started this way before the pandemic, but it was used very heavily and is being used very heavily by our customers to interact with us. So that allowed us to manage the business and use the digital technologies in order to interact with our customers. The second piece of it with the operations, meaning operational excellence and sustainability. So CO2 emissions are our big effort we have in our Future in Action strategy. That's definitely the second piece, and it has a lot to do with digital as well, because we are investing in digital technologies to help us get there. Now, the third piece, and it's where I want to focus, is what we call internally working smarter. And that has to do on how do we adopt digital technologies and how do we change our behaviors in order to manage our business in a much more efficient way and to bring a superior user experience to our employees, customers, suppliers, etc. In here, in this piece, we have several areas, and the one that I am responsible for in service delivery before, beyond being responsible for the initiative itself, is the global enterprise services area, which is our shared services. And in here, we have a very solid and deep strategic partnership with IBM. IBM has been a partner to IBM for many years, but more importantly, during the last 10 years, that IBM has been helping us with an outsourcing agreement. And we just increased the range and scope and length of our relationship a year ago, where we extended that contract to include not only more time, but also more services. In designing those services, Khalid and Khalid's team and my team worked together to design how should that future be? How do we need to change? How do we leverage what we learned from the pandemic? How do we leverage better our new shared services operating model, which I can talk a bit about it later. But the reality is, how do we use the combined experience of the teams in order to design the processes of the future that can allow us to have a better user experience, a better business result, and to pave for the future for CEMEX's growth. So that's how I see how we are working together into this. And Khalid, do you want to add something to that?
Sure, thanks. Thank you very much, Oscar. And I think you articulated very well. I think some key important sound bites there, Saurabh, that it's important that as CEMEX joined in this trusted partnership with IBM, was how do we now take this entire digital transformation and working smarter initiative beyond just the operational skills, right? Oscar brought up an important point about platforms with CEMEX Go. With a lot of data, if you're able to add intelligence through AI, bring in the best of breed of IBM to not only say how this data can be insightful, how the experience of the customers are being impacted, but how CEMEX does business becomes very important to the field and sales teams. So this partnership that we are engaged into goes even beyond operational capability. It is definitely about setting up stable operations as a triage, but then using enabling tech, data insights to really come together to make it intelligent operations, and really furthering the case on working smarter, so that the broader CEMEX agenda of digitally transforming, which they've been doing over the last, let's say, decade or so, becomes more and more important. It's an ever-changing world and ever-changing economy, right? Reality of working anywhere, working remotely. So how do you manage this global magnitude and scale of teams sitting in different locations? How do you orchestrate technology so that data that you're getting from different geos is insightful? And then how do you feed it back to the relevant plants, field sales teams? Becomes important, because those are decision-making, let's say, steps as to what needs to be produced, what needs to be bought, what needs to be delivered. all about the experiences, all about seamless orchestration, but more importantly, using that together with the expertise, industry expertise that CEMEX has, the technical expertise that IBM has to really bring this to life.
Yeah, I know this is a this is truly a one office in action in in my mind. So, Oscar, you described the what. You described what you're trying to do for the last 20 years. Help us understand the why, right? Why were you going after this platform? What were some of the key business drivers? What were you trying to achieve from this?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question, Saurabh, because many of us face change overnight, and I'm referring to the pandemic. Suddenly, we were all sent home. We needed to be safe, but we still need to produce and we still need to fulfill our company's mission, right? So while doing that, we learned that there were a lot of paradigms that we had that just fell from one day to another. And we were very fearful on just imagine on a shared services team that's been always together in an office now saying, we're going to close the books, everyone from their home. And we still need to comply to the times that we have, which are very stringent. So it's a challenge in itself. Servicing the business remotely is another challenge. So we saw an opportunity on how to leverage that along with the potential to adopt technologies, and not particularly today's technologies, which are very relevant, but our ability to ingest more technology and change. How do we leverage that for the future so that we can be more agile, so that we can be better in servicing our customers, better in servicing our company in its growth? So we looked at the phenomenon of just being in a totally different place and saying, what can we learn from here, and what do we need to keep to be more effective in the future? And what we found out is that there were many opportunities as to even what our shared services operating model was. So we were organized in a certain way, we were close in a certain manner, we had the teams focused in certain areas. So we engaged in an internal analysis of what are the opportunities that we saw, and we totally reshaped our shared services operating model. So what we did in there is we totally centralized, for example, Americas, that we operate under 3 regions, Mexico, US, and South American Caribbean. We added all of the service delivery groups into one virtual center of excellence. And that's where we focalized service delivery. While we kept business-facing, business relationship type, advisory type roles in smaller teams, servicing the management teams of the regions. We did the same for EMEA. So on one end, we totally restructured ourselves, and we took the chance of setting up a team that's going to lead the transformation for the service delivery team. So now we have 3 focus. The one focus is service delivery. The other focus is attending our management team's needs with the local teams. And then the team that's going to be in charge of orchestrating change throughout all the groups and the company for the services that we provide. So we saw that opportunity, we jumped at it, we quickly redesigned that. And while doing that, we said, then what is the future of the processes, and how do we want to manage going forward? Let's say order to cash in Americas, now that we have a single group. Previously, we had one group for each one of the regions. Now we have one group. What are the opportunities there? And we embarked with IBM in this case, and we designed how that group is now going to be managing collections, for example, to just put an example, for the full region. And we now have a very thorough roadmap on what do we do now, what do we want to be doing in 1 year, and what capabilities we need to bring forward. And while doing that, Khalid may remember a lot of the discussions we have, but how do we stop focusing on the task and start focusing on business outcomes? What we're managing here is working capital. I am not really concerned how many times we call a customer as long as we get paid. And what are the things that I need to know in order, who do I need to call? And in that, IBM is offering us technology that is helping us analyze, for example, customer behavior and finding what is the propensity to pay. And with that, we are making collection plans that are going to be more effective. In fact, they are paying off already, even though we just started the go live a few months ago. So Khalid, do you want to add anything to that?
Actually, you took up some of my sound bites from my mouth here, Oscar. Right?
Sorry.
No. So it shows how in depth and ingrained you are in the operation. But no, that is very true, right? So I think the way we have looked at it, Saurabh, is that what are different stakeholders' needs? What are the different personas that are going to operate a process? And in the example of collections, what were different needs for an analyst? What were different needs for a finance manager? What were the different needs for a finance director? And also head of operations, right? So when we looked at designing the solution, we actually didn't want to bring something off the shelf. IBM has it. Okay, let's dump it on CEMEX, right? But we actually did co-create sessions with CEMEX to say that how do we need this platform to work already and integrated with let's say their CEMEX Go initiative as well, right? So not only we looked at the design principles of what the user experience will be, but we also looked at what should the data provide so that, as the example, I don't like a stakeholder saying, I don't care about how many calls I made to the customer, but as long as I'm able to get cash, but more importantly, maintain that experience with that customer. So how is that data going to intelligently automate those transactional tasks as we think, but give insightful information to a collector to say, this money is going to be received at this time. So please look at this order being released, because we're not only servicing a B2B segment, we're also servicing a B2C segment from the products and services standpoint in CEMEX. So that intelligent insights was enabled. Secondly is the visibility of performance, not at a management level, but also at a grassroots analyst level, so that the analyst also understands that how is he or she performing and impacting the global measures, the global goals, the global KPIs that the management also sees. So there's a big transparency in how the data was being done. And third and most important is, it was very important to bring a one team culture, right? Like one office, a one team culture where it is not an IBM CEMEX. It is one team that we're trying to hit those CEMEX business priorities in a hybrid environment. So one team with IBM CEMEX plus enabling tech plus insightful data to really bring together this hybrid workforce that is well integrated or orchestrated to, let's say, the mother digital transformation for CEMEX.
Oh, that's very interesting, Oscar and Khalid. Khalid, I wanted to, Oscar described the organizational alignment and changes that CEMEX had to go through this. But, if you look at IBM is a universe by itself. You've got, I often describe IBM executives as a kid in the candy store. You've got so many candies to choose from, but how do you pull that together to get the right flavor? And, you're in this relationship, you're talking about a lot of different pieces of the puzzle. So help us understand a little bit behind the scenes. How were you, within IBM, were able to bring together all these pieces together in a one team kind of a go to market?
A great question there, and Saurabh, and that is also, let's say, the Achilles heel of many companies that we have been traditionally, let's say, looking at, right? If I let's say dial back a decade or so, you will see that once a deal is signed, executives then basically move on to the next, right? And then the collaboration basically drops. The collaboration is only at the sales cycle, convincing all the key stakeholders is the right thing to do, and then it drops. I think what was very important from a CEMEX IBM standpoint is that there has to be continuity, right? In not only the design of the solution, but the ability to implement it seamlessly and also be responsible for the risks, failures, and also get accolades for successes. So we had to redesign, IBM had to redesign the team so that every plant, every geo has to get the same attention as you would do for a white glove customer, if I use the collection example. So we as well in IBM had to reorganize teams in the different global delivery centers, consolidated few, keep few onshore for customer sensitivity. But more importantly, at the governance and stakeholder level at IBM have that consistent flow. So just as an example, my teams interact with the global process owners for CEMEX in the order to cash space almost on a daily and weekly basis. There is report outs at stakeholders from Mahar, the CFO, to Oscar on a monthly basis, where all the updates are basically transparent and they're getting the voice from the field and the market and operations. What is also important is that even though we work in a very virtual environment, CEMEX has been extremely flexible in understanding how IBM also works in the day, night shifts that we have. And there has been a very collaborative effort of getting together to do, let's say, workshops and getting it solved. One very good example, I and Oscar were talking about this yesterday, was actually, how do we plan? What is the game plan for the day? Yeah. And you start the day with that game plan for the day, and then at the end you figure out, okay, did I hit what I needed to hit for that game plan for the day, right? In IBM, in a simple, let's say, agile way of working, it's called wall of work. Extremely, morning starts, team gets together, virtual teams, remotely, everyone gets together. What are the things we need to execute? What are my, let's say, red hot flags that is happening? And then, let's say 6-8 hours, end of the day, how did we manage it, right? So it became very important that if we had to succeed, if we had to, let's say, stabilize operations in less than, let's say, 60 to 90 days, right? In a complex migration, we will all need to be connected at the hip to make this work, right? So it's not like, it has been a very, let's say, there has been a lot of change management, but it's been also very complex migration, a lot of change management, a lot of, let's say, expectations, dependencies, a lot of noises, fortunately, unfortunately, but also a lot of resolutions that were brought in, but not waiting for the next 30 days for when the meeting is going to happen, but is it possible to solve it in the next 24 hours, right? So I think not only that the transparency of data was presented from, let's say, from the ecosystem, but the way of working also got changed. How the agility, the flexibility of both the teams coming together was basically how we define agile way of working, right? How it's all about servant leadership. It is the elements, the activities, the tasks that we can resolve right now, rather than wait for the next period of time to get this resolved, right? So I think all of that became very, very important. And that's what we changed in IBM, right? We didn't want it to come as a big elephant that does not move, but there's this thing that the elephant needs to dance. So we wanted to show CEMEX that yeah, the elephant can dance, and we stay true to it. So like Oscar said, we've been seeing some positive results in certain geos. In other geos, we have improvements to do, which is not a cakewalk, but we know that there are already seeds that have been sown that will improve the relationship long term.
Love it, the dancing elephant.
Let me chime in there, Saurabh, with what Khalid was saying, because I'm a true believer that in a relationship it takes two to tango. So it takes time for the companies to get acquainted. It takes time for teams to know each other. But I think the best thing you can do is go through the hump very quickly and be on the other side of the fence, so that you can start actually working on the how do we make this better from day one. It takes on stabilization, it takes the teams to be focused on delivery, but it takes the company's management as well, for both sides, to allow the teams to make certain operational decisions without having all the contract thing in front of them, because they cannot manage the contract. They need to manage a business result. So, and that's what we charge them on doing. And we have learned how to navigate through all of that formality between IBM and CEMEX, and today we are very successful. I can tell you that the relationship that we have at the operational teams is one that in which teams can say what they truly think of the things, how they're going, but they're also willing to jump to support the other side if needed. And that's already a win. And I think that's key for achieving the results.
Yeah, no, Oscar, both you and Khalid mentioned change management a number of times. Khalid mentioned noise, and with such a large transformational project, I can't imagine everything would be smooth sailing, right? There's got to be challenges and roadblock.
There are, yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit on what were the top 2 or 3 main challenges as you look back that you faced as CEMEX to get on this transformational journey?
I think the greatest one, Saurabh, is making sure that everyone at the executive level and at the management level and the operational level each understands what they need to understand to actually participate. One of the things that we've learned is that communication is never enough. You can do, and then no matter how much you do, you will still wish you did more. So we learned that from our last 10 years, and in this case, we have a very solid, very solid change management plan, and this also has organizational implications. So organization and change management were set together, and we did have a very thorough, and we do have, because we are still changing some things, we do have a communications office that is supporting us in coordinating across all the operations, so that people that need to know, they get to know what they need to know when they need to know it. So the more you can communicate, the better. Now, there are going to be concerns, because if you are a shared services internal provider to the operations, you are responsible for something, but who's going to suffer it if you do it wrong is the business unit. So in this case, what we made sure is that we made a very solid risk management plan to, when the issues arise, because they do arise, at least you have a very solid plan that you can put in motion very quickly. So that's another thing. And then people concerns. There is no way in which change won't impact people. So dealing with people, changing the organization in the right way, giving it time to breathe. It cannot be done all at once. But also the other thing we learned is that having a very long transition period is it creates anxiety on the teams. So what we were very transparent on, and this helped us a lot. I will encourage anyone that can do it in this way, because at least it worked for us very well, is when there was going to be impact to the organization, we let them know with as much advance notice as we could. So people know what's going to happen, what's going to change, how my team is going to change. Now we are going to report where. Is my focus going to change? Is my position going to change? All of those things internally are very relevant, and the more that you can communicate, the more than you transparently share with the teams what's going to happen, the better support that you will have and the more focus you can have in actually inflicting change. Because otherwise you're going to miss all the energy. You're going to spend a lot of energy in dealing with people and issues, right? So I think those would be the three key pieces that we found.
No, that's very sage advice, Oscar. I don't want to miss out on the technology element of this, because as both of you were describing the solution, it seems like what we here at HFS call the AAA trifecta, of analytics, AI, and automation all coming together to really solve a business problem. Khalid, maybe you want to give us a 30-second overview of what is it that you're doing to really transform, order to cash at CEMEX?
It is let's say, a journey. It is very easy for me to say in 30 seconds, but the journey has been a very, let's say, a great learning journey for us, right? So at least from a CEMEX standpoint, CEMEX already has, so they work with different ISV partners as well, and that support the field and sales team. And they also have their entire customer interaction through CEMEX Go, right? And then they also have their systems of records in SAP, etc. So we had a magnitude of systems, complexity of connections, and the complexity and complications of data coming in from different sources that an analyst and agent or manager needs to see. So we were able to look at bringing all this data, converging them into, let's say, a system of engagement, like the collections platform as part of the intelligent workflows in IBM, to come up with, let's say, the insights and data that drive actions automatically or needed a human intervention. Now, what has been interesting in this journey is that for us, who are the receivers of information or who are going to use this information to make a decision was very, very important. So it was important to look at sales teams, very important to look at the finance organization, and also very important to look at the practitioner organization. So how are we able to create that seamless blanket for sales, finance organization, and analysts is what we've been doing from an orchestration standpoint. Now, the data that we've been looking at and providing AI, we're not trying to go more in the past, because a lot of data or information can be biased because of, let's say, what happened through the economy and what's also happened through in the current situations. So we are looking at more insights from use of synthetic and potentially, let's say, increasing digital twin concepts in our intelligent workflows. Now, we also don't want to disturb the technology that much, because it is important to run stable operations. But as we are now seeing stability going to happen in the next 60, 90, 120, 180 days, we're able to also experiment in introducing new intelligent decisioning in our business processes. So apart from, let's say, data integration and configuring based on different personas, it was also important to make the life of an analyst easy. Yeah, I didn't want it to go and work in Excel files, 5 different screens, and the traditional eyes on screens and hands on keys type approach, right? But how could we make their job redundant, to be honest? Because they can then look at what I can spend time on transforming that process, what I can do more from a data analyst standpoint, right? The example is, so for the US portfolio that we manage for CEMEX, now the teams are looking at insights that allow the onboarding of, let's say, newer analysts easier, because the data is giving the data that is being provided to the analyst is showing what are the different attributes of different sales teams in CEMEX, what are they looking for, what are the nuances, what are the exceptions, etc. So it becomes easier for someone coming in to already pick that up, right? Now, if I was just working 6 hours just doing collection calls and doing reconciliations, I'm not looking forward in terms of how can I make someone else's lives easier. So So when I meant that we're also trying to make job redundant for the analyst is to also look forward to say that how can you make life easier for people coming in and also who are looking at your performance, right? So I want to also touch upon like some of the issues that, let's say, or challenges that we also face, right? Which is Oscar clearly articulated a few of the challenges, but also from an IBM perspective, skill is a very big challenge in today's time and age, right? We know with all this disruption, skilled workforce is high in demand. I was just reading a new soundbite is like there's about 500,000 job openings for warehouse management personnel in the supply chain area, right? Yeah. So I can just imagine how is that happening in the services industry. Now, when we look at something that IBM does from a managed services perspective, it's all about human capital. Yeah, even though we talk about technology, it's also about human capital and human skill. And how are we bringing these individuals, acclimating them to the CEMEX environment, their products and services, and saying that what they're doing, how does it impact to the broader agenda becomes important and clear. So we had also had some, let's say, missteps there, but it's actually an important learning for us to say, how do you create that ecosystem that allows people to understand what are you going to do, how what you're doing is impacting the business, and how is that business impacting the strategy for our customers in their, let's say, a broader agenda. So I think that cycle is something that we've been learning, and that has been one big challenge for us as well in the current day and age, or in the current economic system, right? But yeah, sorry for the long answer, but I thought it would be important to add that.
Oh, that was very helpful, Khalid, and I think both of you, this has been a very fascinating conversation. Both of you have touched on all the different competencies that are required to really transform, right? You've talked about people, talent, skills. You've talked about processes. You've talked about culture and change. You've talked about data and obviously technology. But as you look back, before I let you both go, as you look back, Oscar and Khalid, there are a number of enterprises, number of our clients who are trying to go through a similar journey. You've been at it for some time. What would be the one or two tips that you would give them, other enterprise leaders, on how to go about doing this transformation? Because it's not just as easy as throwing technology at it and things get resolved. Maybe Oscar, you go first.
Yeah, that's a great question. And geez, I think that the two key pieces that I would recommend is making sure that the objective is very clear, that the objective is powerful, that is palatable, that people will die for the outcome if they do it right, that everyone will be willing to commit because the outcome is great for the company and for everyone. And so that's number one. And number two, executive support. There is no way these type of changes with this deep rooting on the teams and on impacting every single business unit is going to go ahead without absolutely full support from the executive committee of the company. So definitely those two will be my biggest tipping points. The other one that that we're pursuing that is can be very material for everyone as well is let's have as one of the outcomes of it that the experience, not only for the people that's providing the service, but most importantly from the people that is requesting the service or receiving the service, that the experience is much better. If you put user experience at the center, then definitely you will design something that is going to be better for the service recipients. And if they win, everybody wins. That would be my
yeah. really strong objective executive level support and user experience. So that's really great. Khalid, anything that you can add to that?
Yeah, so difficult to top some things that Oscar said. I think executive decisioning is one of their. I think maybe in the last 2 decades, what I've seen is there is no solution that fits all, right? And every industry, every customer is unique. So it's very, very difficult to now create canned solutions and deliver. It is, I think, the day and age of co-creation. It's a day and age of sharing transparently what ideas, what challenges, and what are the difficulties that we need to face, and then come to the table with that open mindset. And that's what happened when CEMEX came, and as articulated with Oscar, they were extremely transparent into what the challenges, what the pain point is, so that we can then think of what solution can be designed and co-create. So I think this co-creation element where we're jointly collaborating to understand how we can solve for it is definitely a big, I would say, a big tip I would use with anyone, right? So there are different tools and mechanisms. In IBM, we have Garage, which is it's very well renowned, but co-creating is important. And then when you look at co-creation, how do you create those moments of let's say matter and the moments of experience? Yeah. So when I say moments of matter, is that is the design working and is it actually hitting what we needed? And the moments of experience is that who is hitting, is it actually getting the desired experience from it, right? It's not about 16 clicks to get an outcome. Can we do it in 3 clicks, or can we do it in no clicks at all, right? Just to be a little bit absurd there. But I think that entire co-execute element, where we are constantly looking at those moments of matter and moments of experience to really, let's say, there's a word that we use, it's canary testing, that will the canary survive the mine, right? So how do we do it? And I love animals. There's no question about it. But how do we develop that? And then I think what is working well, and touch wood should work extremely well, is how do we look at this entire one working mentality, right? Working smarter, definitely as one team, also knowing that there's going to be this disruptive factors technology, but you still continue to bring that human touch to your process. So that human element still is going to be extremely important. Oscar also stated that no matter what your rank, title, designation is, you have created an organization and a change management system that anyone is able to voice his or her opinions, his or her challenges, his or her pain points, that the management is able to resolve, and hence the entire thing on servant leadership. So I think these were a few of my, let's say, sound bites here. Saurabh.
Oh, that's great. Hey, thanks, Oscar and Khalid. I think this was a really, really rich conversation. I think one thing is for clear, there's the power of collaboration that sort of comes through. And I think as enterprises look to getting towards that one office mindset, towards that one office goal, I think it's collaboration. It's sort of partnering with each other in a very transparent way that comes through. So thanks again, and then back to you, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Saurabh, Oscar, and Khalid. I wrote down the word collaboration as I was listening, and it was a great discussion about collaboration in one office in action. Thanks, everyone. To learn more about HFS, head over to hfsresearch.com, where you can view most of our research for free. Plus, we have a growing library of videocasts just like this one that you can take with you wherever you go. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next HFS videocast.